prepare. Listen to the people. Listen to humanity. Listen to the parrot. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot. Listen to the people. Listen to humanity. Listen to the parrot. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Parrot TV. Listen to the people. Listen to humanity. Listen to the parrot. Parrot TV. 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 Parrot TV.
The Literary Corner, brought to you by New York Parrot TV, the voice for humanity. Hello, welcome to New York Parrot's Literary Corner. I'm Dustin Pickering, your noble and honest host. Today we have Shweta Rao Garg. She is an artist, poet, and academic based in India. She is an associate professor of English at DI IICT, Gangadhar. She was a Fulbright doctoral scholar at University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in 2009 to 2010. As a poet, she aims to bring women's lived experiences in her work of Goddesses and Women, published in 2021 by Sahitya Akademi, India's National Academy of Letters, is her first collection of poems. She is a narrative painter. Her first solo exhibition of paintings was based on the works of Shakespeare called The Bard in Acrylic, while the second was based on the everyday lives of urban Indian women called Of Goddesses and Women. You can check out her website when you get a chance. So it's nice to meet you, Shweta. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Dustin. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you. I hope we have an excellent conversation about your art and your writing. So my first question is, what is your purpose with Goddesses and Women? What do you expect readers to get, and viewers as well, since it's also a visual art exhibit? What do you expect people to get out of it when they, engage with it?
That's a great question to begin with. So I come from a country where gods and goddesses are everywhere. And so on the one hand, we have divinity who is expressed as female in female forms, all kinds of female forms. And on the other, we have, so when you look at the indicators which tells you how women are treated in the society, you don't see them treated as well. So there is always this dichotomy, and there is always a gap between how we look up to goddesses and how we look down at women.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to, at some level, indicate that there is a problem here. And what happens when you turn the table? What happens when you see goddess as women? And what if you try to see women as goddesses too? Perhaps it will be slightly better for them. So it began with this idea.
Interesting. So it's really sort of like transforming the power that society grants to the feminine and in their ideology, and like making people reflect on the nature of why is there a gap between this ideology or this viewpoint of almost glamorizing women through goddesses, yet in real life women are sort of sidelined and not treated fairly. I think that's true in a lot of places, especially and also in America. But I think we've made some advances. How is the movements there in India for female rights? How are those working out for you guys?
As far as activism is concerned, I mean, India is doing an amazing job. There are all kinds of women at different levels: rural, urban, countryside, urban, and all kinds of ages. So people have been fighting, and it started along with the fight of independence with the British. So men and women fought together for that freedom.
Mm-hmm.
But was there freedom? As far as the social chains on women, not sure about that. So that struggle still continues. So, but at some level, there has to be, some conversation between everyday life of people and the political sphere, which
Hmm.
talks about liberation of women, and that balance has yet to come. It's not come yet.
Right. It's, sometimes there's a really large gap between the ideals presented in ideology and what society holds up as what they want, and then what you actually see in real life. And I think those ideals are important because we have to engage to move ourselves towards them. And so I'm really interested in, these different movements that are pushing forward, all over the world now that, I'm not sure what prompted women to suddenly stand up and say, well, look, we've kind of had it here. We're tired of, being objectified and treated and abused. And women have a good role in society. And when you respect women and their maternity and their being, it's much better for all of us, I think. What do you think?
I agree, but I don't even think that there is a collective consensus that, women are all coming together and
Right.
then they say there's a problem in the system. That doesn't happen.
Right.
So that's the whole point of patriarchy, that it's not the lines are not very clearly divided. So it's
Hmm.
not like there are men on the one side and women on the other.
Right.
You find that, there are always men who are supporting, but more importantly, there are a lot of women, like majority of them, who would still agree or rather live within the paradigms of patriarchy without ever questioning it, and making it difficult to difficult for women and men who question
Hmm.
that paradigm. So I think that is always, I think it's everywhere, isn't it? I mean, be it America, be it
Right.
India, you always
Hmm.
find that. So it's not very, it's not along the gender lines, these divides.
Right.
Yeah.
You're definitely right. It's not so black and white as matriarchy, patriarchy kind of thing. It's do you think that women who are more prone to be academics and intellectuals, do they think they're more prone to sort of get involved in activist movements that push for women's rights?
I mean, of course, and not just. I mean, you're right with that. Academics and intellectuals. Like, we are a major pain in the ass as far as society is concerned.
Yeah,
But then,
definitely.
there are. I mean, when I say younger women, so I
Hmm.
see. I mean, I see a lot of hope there because I also teach younger women. So, in their own naive sense, they question, and I think everything starts with that. So it's okay if you are not picketing out there on the crossroad with a placard, but as long as you're questioning certain norms, I guess that's how you begin, and I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think once you start questioning things, you start wanting to unsettle things a little bit. You realize there's injustices, and you're being told one thing, and then an act it's totally different. It just doesn't make sense. And you want, in your heart and in your mind, you're kind of concerned about that just that sort of disparity in reality. Does your painting and your visual artwork and your poetic work, do they converge on these kind of themes, or do you approach them differently somehow when you paint versus when you write poetry?
So that's a great question, actually. I try to think of it and try and make sense because, I really feel that there are, medium, as far as mediums are concerned, these are very different. And
Hmm.
I think I went to visual art pretty late. So I started with abstract art when I was 11, 12, perhaps. I didn't know visual language, but I went into it. And then when there was a time when I became more conscious and aware and also confident about language, I started writing more and doing less of art. Right now, I'm in a stage when I'm trying to balance both these things.
Hmm.
So sometimes I'm not sure, like, do I call myself an artist first? Do I call myself a writer first? I'm not sure about that. So maybe at some level, I'm trying to do the same thing using two different mediums, but these mediums may look very different. I remember reading about E. Cummings. He painted as much as he wrote, and people know him as a poet, but he took himself as an artist. He took his art very seriously. So people would ask him that, your poetry is revolutionary, whereas your art doesn't look very revolutionary. And he said that, as far as I'm concerned, both these things are important. So it's possible that, I'm not sure. So it's like, do I suck as an artist? Am I better as a poet? Or is it the other way around? I have no way to know. But
Hmm.
for me, both these things are important. So I'm not trying to translate one into another at any time, but perhaps these, I mean, art and poetry, they are both like reflections of certain thoughts and expressions of thoughts in different mediums. I would never choose which one's like closer to my idea
Mhm.
than the other. I would not know.
Another person that comes to mind when it comes to this, what art or what is your main art? There's the singer and the songwriter Leonard Cohen, who was really a poet,
Yeah.
and then he got involved in making music because he knew poetry wasn't going to, he wasn't going to get him much attention for his words or make any money or anything. He wanted to make a living as an artist, and so he got into music, and he's really kind of known as a musician. But poetry is like, to me, that's where he is. That's who he is, but the music was sort of used as a medium to present the poetry. So what influences your painting? What, as far as other painters, as far as subject matter, is there any particular things that you get involved with? And, what is your painting cycle like?
So there are, I mean, I could like list down a huge list of influences. Okay. So it starts with everyone. It's like, somebody said that you come out of, Gogol's overcoat when you're a writer. And I think when you are a painter, maybe everybody kind of jumps out of Van Gogh and what he felt like. So there is this obsession with Vincent Van Gogh, no matter where
Mhm.
you are in the world. So I think, so it starts with this very naive idea, this myth of suffering artist, that you are way beyond your age, your society, and you are never understood. So no matter what you're going through, whatever your gender, your sexuality, your race is, you identify with the suffering artist. I mean, I mean, somebody, people tell me that he it wasn't as bad as people think it was with Van Gogh, but
Mhm.
but I think, and also like in terms of technique. I think for me, it all began when I looked at impressionists, and but
Mhm.
then, as I said, I began with abstractions. I began with abstract forms, and for a lack of better language, as I said, I was like a young, preteen rather. So I didn't know what to call them. So I just called them lines. Okay, I called them like, I don't know, and then others would look at it and said, "Oh, you do modern art." I said, "What is modern art?" Art does The art that doesn't make sense is modern art.
Mhm.
So this is my crash course of modern art, which was absolutely not true. Like I know better now, but now my forms are far more concrete. I do more figurative work than abstract work. And sometimes when I'm too overwhelmed, I may go back to abstract, but I do narrative work much more. I do human figures. I like to paint women. I like to paint men. I like to paint mass and flesh, as in like people with, weight around them. I like that. So I would like to, question what beauty means. I
Mhm.
like to question, what conventional beauty would mean in a scenario where everything is photoshopped. Everybody is supposed to look athletic. Everybody's supposed to look sexy in a way. So I question that sexiness. What makes something sexy? What
Yeah.
doesn't make anything else sexy? So through my art, I ask that. So my paintings are not pretty. They not necessarily pretty,
Mhm.
but they are asking this question of what beauty is at many levels.
Yeah, that's definitely an artist's question. It's, and I've asked myself. I mean, when it comes to like, a human beauty, it's what do we call beauty and why? It's a really powerful question, and I think that gets you on a journey of studying all kinds of different things. And conventionally, I mean, looking at other societies and what they perceived as beautiful. The Greeks used to, their statues and so forth are like the ideal humanity. And I've always kind of thought that our models on our magazines are sort of like Greek statues in a way. That's sort of the similar thing with the difference being one is meant to be art that you observe and enjoy, and the other is a commercial product. So there's another division there in society is how we use beauty. It sort of in a way degrades the beauty. Do you have any observations on yourself on like how we construct what is beautiful, or what in our society, how we construct these value systems?
So it's very personal, really. So I think I was a large a large kid, and and I remember that when I was 12, people would think I am in college, and I was definitely not in college. So
Mhm.
I remember growing up feeling shame. I was like deeply I felt shame that I look huge. I felt shame that I was fat. And at that point, I didn't have the confidence to own up my own body and celebrate for what it is. I just didn't have that language.
Mhm.
So throughout my teenage and until almost like early 20s, I grew up with that issue, like, with that, anxiety that I
Mhm.
need to do something about it. And I thought that, when I would actually get a job and save a lot of money, maybe I would do surgeries, to look a certain way. So there was this constant pressure, especially on women, also on men. But, as a woman, I felt a lot growing up that you need to be thin. And if you're not, then you're not desirable. Okay, then
Mhm.
nobody is interested in you. Guys are not going to find you pretty, or you're not going to get a husband who would be interested in you. So there are all these factors when you are growing up, and it wasn't nice. So what is beauty was always, bothering me. And who decides this is too fat, and who decides this is like the perfect weight, who decides this is the perfect waist size, and this is how you're supposed to weigh on the weighing machine? Who decides these things? And I was growing up in a country which was changing its ethos. So this was post-liberal India, where India stopped being what it was, and there were more and more foreign companies coming in, which also meant satellite television for the first time in our history. So we would see images of white women, okay, like beautiful white, beautiful, like, look at me, like, so women who have
Mhm.
perfect body. I was in a very impressionable age where India hosted the first Miss World. Okay, and that was such a big thing because it was projected as a very empowering situation. And the fact that beauty pageants could be toxic, and with the fact
Mhm.
that it objectifies women, was not, it wasn't obvious to me while growing up. So I thought that if you want to be powerful, you need to look like those women. But with my genetics and with my body structure, I could never be that woman. So I think that played a lot of role. So eventually, when I did my master's, in English literature, then my PhD in women's writing, the whole language of the standpoint feminist theory gave me a new sense of the world. It gave me a language. It gave me confidence to ask that question back, to question the gaze, which normalizes a woman's
Mhm.
body to look a certain way. And through my art, through my research, through my writing, perhaps I answer that question
Mhm.
because it is visceral. It's part of my own experiences.
Right. We're going to take a brief break and we'll come right back with some of your poetry. Thanks for joining us on the show.
In 6 Days, a poem by Jill Sharon Kimmelman. In 6 days, pristine snow will fall again. The air will be filled with the scent of newly arrived winter, frilling the ground, creating lacy patterns with our shoes. In 6 days, we will share warm, made from scratch cocoa. Discover a delight in devouring whispery confections of buttery toffees and chocolate truffles. In 6 days, we will crawl beneath our wedding ring quilt, holding hands to catch each other's dreams. The tangle of our limbs, a perfect jigsaw puzzle. Morning dawns, and in 6 more days, we will join together, at last, perfectly remade. In 6 days, a poem by Jill Sharon Kimmelman.
Thank you, Jill, for your wonderful poem read there. That was a nice video. So, Shweta, would you like to share a couple of poems with us?
Sure, that would be great. So I would like to read a poem, which is, so I spoke about how is it that, we deify our goddesses and wish we did that to our women. We sometimes, take away their dignity. So this poetry is a reflection on that. This
Mhm.
is called On Basant Panchami, which is a festival which celebrates a particular goddess. It goes like this. You are draped in a Van Gogh yellow, a paste of mustard, turmeric, and sun. In the season of Saraswati, the temple is thronged with some embarrassed students standing in line to get blessings on their books and pens. You skip that line and join the crowd to see the adorned Saraswati with her fish like eyes, her perms, her gems, and maybe other gods who make a cameo in her film. This year, she is a pure glory in white. The camphor puts you in an instant high. You pray for inspiration, for success, for that rare vision. You plan to stay, to plead, till the professor, acting as priest, would push you away. You half expect her to reach out through her plaster of Paris lips. You stare long enough to feel her eyes come alive. You inch towards a divination till you recoil at someone grabbing your arse. You look around the crowd and then at her in disbelief. When the professor, acting as priest, finally pushes you away, you think you saw water in her fish like eyes.
Interesting images there, and I call it like some of the questions we've been, looking at kind of coalesce in that poem. Very interesting. Would you like to share another one?
Yes. Okay. So this is based on a story, a folk story of a young woman whose husband dies, but then she keeps her husband's body and she goes on a long journey, a very a very well, difficult journey to get her husband alive. So she does series of things. So this is called The Bride of the King's Son. The bride of the king's son sighs at the moonlit night as the king's son slept, snored a little perhaps. She wonders if she could do it all again, what she did after the king's son had died. Fasting for the dead boy, tending his body, plotting to extract a clay pot from the old woman, getting her to tell about the talking cow, then getting the moody cow to like her enough to take her to the goddess's abode, where the bride of the king's son, God the goddesses say, may you always stay blessed, stay fortunate. The goddess, red faced, was forced to tease out life out of the king's son. And how the king and his wife, their sons and their brides, were awed with her, the king's son's bride. Now that the king's son is healthy, not to mention quite alive, her people's skills lay to waste. The king's son's bride itches to embark on a journey to the old woman who sells clay pot, to the talking cow, to the absent-minded goddess, and get the king's son back to life. But the king's son is asleep and snores a little perhaps. So the bride of the king's son looks at the moonlit night and sighs.
Beautiful. So, in conclusion with the program, is there anybody you'd like to give a shout out to or a thank you?
Oh, yes. I mean, there are just so many people I could, but I mean, one doesn't know where to begin. So, I mean, more importantly, I believe it is my mother. So we were three. I mean, like I have two more siblings, so we had three daughters, and that was a big thing while you were growing up in the town where we were growing up. So it's still the case that when daughters are born, people don't come to congratulate you. So and when sons are born, they come like because they think there's going to be a party. But so I remember the day when my sister, my like the youngest sister was born, and then the neighbors were like all sad, and then my parents were happy. They're like, okay, the baby is healthy. And then the neighbors came to them and said that but why are you celebrating? Aren't you sad? What are you going to do with three daughters? Because it's like it's what do you do with them? Because it's very difficult to find them so there's a lot of taboo with women even today. Even with something as birth, you will have a problem. So I think I would like to shout out to my mother for fighting for us, and my father for fighting for us, from shielding us, from giving us the education that we deserved, for giving us the dignity that we deserved, and giving us confidence, and also so many female artists, so many female poets. You
Absolutely.
start with, yeah, right, you start with Virginia Woolf, and it doesn't matter if she's British and she was writing like 100 years ago. She was, but whatever she wrote at that point of time, and somebody reads at this point of time, it still is inspirational. Sylvia Plath, whatever she writes, whatever she felt, a woman living in India feels that even today. One feels her rage, one feels her sorrow, and you can't really overgrow, we grow under her shadow, women like that. So a shout out to all these amazing women poets for making it possible for poets everywhere, women everywhere, really, to articulate their experiences. So a great shout out to them.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Shweta. It's been pleasant talking with you. You guys out there have been watching the Parrot Literary Corner. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do. And you can donate at PayPal at paypal.me/nyparrot. Get in touch with me if you'd like to be a guest at Literary Corner at newyorkparrot.com. Stay tuned for the politics coming up soon. Thank you for viewing. Subscribe again, and have a pleasant afternoon. Support this program at paypal.me/nyparrot. And have a pleasant afternoon out there, and watch the politics when that comes up here in just a little bit of time. Thanks to our viewers out there. And thanks to Shweta for joining us today.
Thank you.
Strolling. As I go outdoors, nature beckons to take a stroll in the yard, the garden, then through the mind. Stepping into the world of nature fills the voids of empty spaces left by loneliness, turmoil, stress,